He's now a professor of energy policy at the University of Alberta, and he joins us on the line from Edmonton.
Alright, so the channel looks like it's live. I suppose it'll start with a bit of an introduction. I've recently got Kerbal Space Program. This is partly due to the near obsession that my friend and currently only viewer Alex Newcomb had. One of the things that attracted me the most to this game was sort of an experience that I had with Civilization. Civilization is partially responsible for my decision to go to university because ultimately it promoted me to go and look at some of the things that the game was dealing with, different wonders of the world, some of the history. And I think one of the things that I really liked about the Kerbal Space Program demo was that I was accidentally learning far more about space travel than I had ever thought I would know. So even though I didn't really have much of a background in the hard sciences, I wind up learning at least this cartoony version of rocket science. So the nice thing about the Kerbal Space Program is that I am learning it, and so any non-gamers in the chat are going to probably be around the same level of knowledge that I have. It also gives me something to talk about in terms of just learning the game and sort of making some decisions in terms of where I'm going. So we'll talk a bit about the... I should also note there's a bit of a delay between chat and the stream, so I'm just seeing some of the stuff that's being written right now. Anyways, part of the mode that I'm going to be going into is what used to be the career mode to this game, and is now a special one dedicated to science. So my current learning form is one which doesn't worry about the finances. Oh, I don't want to start. I'm not going to worry about finances, but I am going to worry about making increasingly successful trips to the moon, to other places, in order to gain more science and to be able to build more sophisticated rockets. One of my ideas for the stream, as long as it continues, to be not boring for myself or anybody else, would be to do the full career mode, and I'd actually like to do 2 different stories. One of a basically government program which is dedicated to collecting as much science as possible without going bankrupt. But I also figured I would do a, let's say, failing space startup which has been acquired by a private equity firm like Bain Capital, which is purely profit driven. Success absolutely does not mean that Kerbals make it back, especially for the private firm. Anyways, I thought that would be an interesting little narrative to weave, to do purely privatized space travel compared to the regular one. But at this point here, I think I'm just going to jump into the game and talk a little bit about my current progress and where I'm going to be going. Thanks. I could also come up with other stories too. In fact, this is one of the things I like about Kerbal Space Program, is all the little jokes that I can do with like music in the background and things like that. They do definitely lend themselves to these little creations. I have become somewhat attached to Jebediah, whatever his last name is, Kerman. So when he explodes in a fireball, I'm probably going to feel a little bit sad, but maybe not as sad as XCOM. So as I introduced at this at the start of the broadcast, this is a mode dedicated to science. You do actually begin here, so I've done a little bit of work basically collecting all the low-hanging fruit, taking science off of the easiest job for NASA is to study the soil that it's on. So attached to Jeb that you'll bring him back to me. Sorry, I'm probably going to spend more time reading the chat than playing the game. Yeah, you begin here with no technology, and I basically took some samples of the soil at the launch pad, launched a rocket to a grassy field, and took some samples there, did an EVA, to which Jeb decided to comment that he probably didn't need a spacesuit to get there, which is more than likely true. And I have since achieved a high orbit over Kerman, the planet. But the goal here is going to be to establish a orbit around the moon, to conduct some experiments around it, and maybe if I'm feeling ambitious I'll try and do a Mun landing. But I think that's the way that Jeb dies in the horrible fireball. I actually have lots of science here, but another thing that I've been doing is I've been trying to follow Scott Manley's really good guides. So I can't claim complete originality. However, I have not seen his video on... I saw a little bit on his Mun orbits, and I have not seen anything about Mun landing, so we're pretty much at the limits of my Manley knowledge. Yes, my first craft did not include a parachute. So actually I should probably explain what's going on here, especially because I have one expert watching and probably nobody else, but we'll keep this for posterity. This is the command module for the ship, and the first thing I want to attach to it is a parachute, basically so that when, assuming that this thing comes back to the planet, it does not crash into the planet. But I don't have any means of going up into the atmosphere, so let's see if I remember how to do this. I want to be performing science experiments, and I will probably want to do one in a high orbit around the Mun and a low orbit, so I'll do 2 of these. This is just a set of tools that you can use once while you're in space. Then there's going to be the Mystery Goo Containment Unit. This is another type of science experiment. This raises an interesting question in terms of a ship, and actually I think I can illustrate this with the center of mass. So the game does seem to take its physics somewhat seriously. I'm assuming I cannot apply for NASA based off of this game, but I do need to at least follow the principles of somewhat sane design, ignoring my America ships. But you can notice here that if I just stick this on, the center of mass is shifting. I actually didn't know that it does it in real time, which is a really neat feature. Whereas if I had a rocket on it, clearly if I have any kind of imbalance, I'm going to have a very difficult time steering this ship. So I did already kind of prepare myself for 2 experiments, but it also makes sense to have this symmetry on the ship so that I can actually fly in a certain amount of control. I don't know, once you see my piloting, you'll see that retaining any kind of control is a bit of a lost cause. But I'll at least make a gesture for it. Now, I'm, again, a failed physicist, so I'm not entirely sure how it works. It would seem to me that if I make it really top-heavy, this is going to cause problems, and I know I'm going to be abandoning this anyway. In fact, I should probably add another part to this. So I'm just going to try and make them as low as I can get, but I don't actually have any scientific reason for doing so. It's just something I've kind of thought you always do. I think I will decouple here. Alright, so what I just added to the ship is something that will break it apart. So I know I actually should maybe just start, probably one of the part of the appeal of this game as well as some of the stories that you can tell are is I was really into astronomy, and actually I still am to a certain extent. I still have a favorite constellation and things like that. But obviously, you know, a small boy is going to be interested in rocket ships. So it's very weird, some of the ideas which are ingrained. The idea of stages to rockets was a very intuitive one to me, just because I've seen so many IMAX documentaries on these things that clearly you don't want to, you know, you don't want to maybe burden your flight with unnecessary weight. So this is sort of an idea of stage. Now, I don't actually have any thrusters on this thing yet, so it's not entirely what's going on here. But basically, I want to break my ship apart at convenient times. I'm going to be going to the Mun, so I don't know if it's supposed to be Moon or Mun, but I'll add a tank here. And I'm not entirely sure what the deal with these things are. Scott Manley suggests that this is the most efficient engine. I suppose what I know is there's a mass 0.5, drag 0.2. See, I guess the thing that's a little odd to me is each of these have different masses, but they also have different thrusts. And, you know, this has a mass of 1.25, but a thrust of 215, whereas this has a mass of 0.5 and 50. So, oh, hang on. That's correct, they will be left in space, but I'm going to be doing an EVA, and I'm going to be collecting the data from them, so I can leave the devices in space, and I'll have the data with me inside of my module. Actually, to give you an idea of where the government and the privatized ideas came from, I used to build, like before I had landing gear, I used to build these rockets where I would have 2 science modules. I would collect the real science from this one on top, and then this one would just be a buffer, because I would always lose the 2 kind of structural components of a rocket when it landed back down. So, no, thank you. So yeah, basically I would basically build this very expensive science module so I could crash it into the world, and leave this one, you know, safe on top. So that was part of the idea of the two different stories of 2 different space programs. So the idea for this one here is that this will be my space component of the rocket, but I also need to get it off the planet. So, oh yeah, I was talking about rocket efficiency. So I suppose the thing that that confuses me a little bit about what Scott Manley says, oh, maybe it's in here. This has a thrust of 50 and a mass of 0.5. This has a mass of 1.25 and a thrust of 215. So this is a little under 3 times heavier, but it definitely has more than 3 times thrust. So I'm not entirely sure what makes this more efficient than this. I just know that a smart guy said, you know, it was more efficient. So I'm just kind of running with it. I really wish I could find a way of figuring out exactly what the different properties of these are. So this I'm going to consider my space part of my rocket, but I need to figure out a way to transport this thing up into the upper atmosphere. Oh wait, I'm told electric charge is important, so I currently don't have a budget, so we'll just throw 4 of those in. If I'm allowed. And again, 4 or 2 doesn't really matter because I don't believe that has affected my center of mass. So again, I gotta figure a way of breaking apart this rocket. I've got my space component, and now I'm gonna be worrying about how I get into space. Now, I believe I've heard somewhere that 4 of these tanks will be enough to get me into space. I hope that's true. I'm also told that I think this is the one that has steering. Yeah, I believe this one has a certain amount of steering inside of it, so I'll use this. And then these used to be a favorite of mine until I found not this. These majestic looking things. So I have a new favorite rocket. But again, this somewhat intuitive idea of not taking things unnecessarily into space, I want to build another thing that'll break them off. Now, I have 4 of them, so these little rings are not quite going to do the trick, so I'm going to use these components instead. I don't even know what they're called. Radial decoupler. Yeah, it makes sense, actually. Call it that. I really... Okay, so 2 doesn't quite seem to do the trick. 4 is just magical, and it looks awesome, and I make ridiculous looking rockets with lots of power. So I'm just going to stick 4 of these things on and hope it's enough. One feature of this game, which is not a feature so much as a frustration, is I can never really know whether or not these things are actually on the... Wait, did they just go sideways? I have a suspicion that might lose some efficiency sideways. I believe those are attached. I hope they are. I assume that they will. And basically, I'm going to break these things off as soon as as soon as I can. One thing that kind of interested me a little bit about the Scott Manley video was he would decrease the power of the solid fuel boosters. I want to see if there's a meaningful comparison. Okay, so these have a smaller thrust, and I think his argument was that in the atmosphere there is more drag, so this might cause me a bit of grief later, but I'll put these down to... I think he did a third... Yeah, okay, so he did a third for these. I'll do a third for these. Apparently, there's drag in the atmosphere, which, again, it makes sense. And for some reason, that makes it undesirable to go at full speed. So I'm kind of half remembering some of these ideas. Go with that and hope it turns out. And then a really clever idea that somebody had brought up was to add some stacked decouplers at the bottom and then kind of start your ship off on some blocks, which is wonderful because I don't seem to have that massive crane with which I brought up the America. So this is effectively the rocket that I'm going to be taking to orbit in the Mun, but not the full thing. Again, I'll be doing 2 experiments, one in high orbit, one in low orbit. I'm going to be using Goo. I'm going to be using these science modules. I will also be taking observations from my Kerbal. I'm going to be using 4 large rockets plus my main one to actually get into space. And I'm hoping I have enough fuel to navigate and return home using the smaller part of the rocket. The last thing is to give this thing a name. So let's give it a very scientific name. Alright, we've named it, and it's time for a launch. Alright, it's night, which I think looks kind of nice. Actually, so the demo didn't seem to have quite the same lighting. Now I forgot my stages, so I should double check that I've done this correctly. Yeah, there's one change that I want to make, but that's actually a good chance to talk about it. I quite like the lighting effects. So, I want to detach the blocks at the same time that I fire the rocket, so I'm going to attach that. I also am not going to be firing this rocket at the same time, which I want to do. So this is going to be the first stage where I fire everything and remove it from the blocks. My next stage will be to remove these. The next stage will be to remove the entire lower portion. Now that, again, is once I've exhausted all the fuel. The craft will become lighter as it uses up its fuel. One thing I remember from my early astronomy interests was that I believe the majority of the fuel is used to get, in the first bit of the journey, obviously because the gravity is much higher. And the rest of these stages are where I want them to be. So basically, spend a lot to get up in the air, remove the dead weight once these have exhausted their fuel. Once the main rocket has exhausted its fuel, remove that, and rely on the upper portion to get to the Mun and do the experiments don't actually take fuel. Now, it would not be one of my streams if we did not have something appropriate for the occasion. So please bear with me a second, enjoy the fine view of the terminal while I select something very appropriate. I don't even remember which of these is which. All right, this one looks good. I think I used this one. Jebediah Kerbin. Kerbin salutes you. Alright, so, it's dark, so it's impossible to explain this. Basically, I lost almost all of my fuel tanks. I'm also having a lot of trouble steering this, so what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to check my trajectory here. Apoapsis is 20, and then I'm going to come crashing back to Earth. So at this point, I'm going to be utterly wasteful in the complete dark, jettison this, deploy my parachute, and in order to keep it from being boring, I'm just going to speed up time. It's also a lesson for future streaming that I probably want to do all of my launches during daylight, because this is not exactly the most compelling television in the world. Alright, so a review of what happened. I was originally trying to steer the ship so that I could establish something of an orbit. Now, I don't know if it was the angle at which I was doing things, or the fact that the rocket was spinning. Whatever the case, I think one of those four containers collided with the remaining fuel, so it basically just smashed off my main rocket. I could presumably have gotten an orbit with that. I probably still could have gotten an orbit, but I definitely would not be going to the moon, or if I did get to the moon, I would be not coming back. So, I'm surprised you're not heckling me more. Yeah, the timing of the song was actually really good. So, at this point here, I'm just going to be floating back home with my tail between my legs and reviewing my design, let's say. The steering can be solved by adding winglets, and I believe I actually got some advanced ones. So, I believe the ticker is to sea level, so that should be the full 200 meters. I like the fact that even though this mission was a disaster, Jebediah looks less scared than he was on the successful America flight. Hooray! Curiously, we got absolutely no science from that mission. Who knew? Okay, 25 minutes into my streaming career, and I have succeeded at failing. Jeb clearly lives for the adrenaline. I wonder if we can... Yeah, he can bungee jump off the assembly building, I think. Alright, let's review the design. I suspect time will not be going... Yeah, it's daylight up there. Yeah, okay, so no winglet. I don't believe there is any better way for me to put these massive fuel boosters on. I think I'm going to run into collision problems no matter what. So I'll leave those. I'll just give myself a better winglet. Again, I don't know a lot about what differentiates, but this has a higher number and it weighs less. So. And again, going for the symmetry, adding the winglets there. I don't believe I will need these for this part of the rocket, but we'll see. And it is now the bucket of bolts Mark II. I can also take a moment to fix my staging diagram, so I don't need to do that each time. Again, as a recap, if you're just joining, first stage is going to be removing the blocks and firing all the rockets. I have made this a little bit weaker because of the suggestion that the atmosphere has more drag. The main rocket is this area here with 4 fuel tanks. I'll run that sort of lower as I'm going up, and when these things run out, I'll advance that to maximum speed. And then this is going to be the only thing that's actually doing work in space. This will detach, which is the third stage, a rocket built into that. Wait a minute, that is the right rocket, right? Yes. And then finally, once I've collected the science out of these modules, I'll detach that and parachute back home. Clearly on the previous flight, these steps were quite a bit closer than I had intended them. Alright, to the launch pad. I seem to remember a really good song for... Okay, I'm going to speed up time just so we can... Oh, that's neat. I mean, it looks like it's a piece of paper that they're rotating. Ah, there we go. Sunrise. So it's a little nicer to look at. It's nice. I think it looks quite nice on the launch pad at night. It's just the actual flight is invisible once you're away from the lighting, which makes sense. Just it's not very aesthetically pleasing. All right. I need to make it a tradition to select proper music, so... do I remember? Yes, okay. What could go wrong? Yes. Alright, I should maybe give some credit for this, because I am certainly using this music without permission. Pretty much all the launch music is from a group called Two Steps from Hell, which I believe makes their career out of making soundtrack-like music, and it seems to be used just about everywhere, so I derive no income from this, and probably never will, so I believe Twitch should be the one who's paying them for the use of their music, or they can just mute these videos like they have done in the past. Not that that's wrong. I spent a lot of time studying intellectual property. Maybe this is not the time to talk about that. Jebediah Kerman, to infinity and beyond. Because things seem to have calmed down a little bit, I'm currently looking at apoapsis, one of the first fancy terms that I learned playing this game. I'm basically trying to get it to 100,000 meters, I guess 100 kilometers. I'm trying to be efficient with the fuel use, but I'm failing horribly at it. Basically, this represents the highest point in my orbit, at which point I will shut down my engines, and if left unchecked, I'm basically going to crash back down to Earth, or Kerbin. But I'm going to be able to manipulate this. Okay, I just stopped. So I'm going to be able to manipulate this orbit so that it becomes a real orbit. For that, I'm going to zoom out. A little too far. So as you can see here, I'm just going to go back into the water. But the game gives me some tools to... Okay. That's enough drama. I actually think the space music for this is quite nice too. I'm surprised it hasn't turned on yet. Oh, there we go. So, I'm going to add a maneuver here. Now, this actually makes a bit of intuitive sense if you think about it. I maybe can't explain to you why it's already starting as a curve or a parabola, but this is called my prograde. This is my retrograde. Now, prograde means I'm moving in the same direction, so it sort of makes sense that if I thrust in that direction, I'm going to be going faster. Going faster is going to take sort of this tail of the journey and push that out. And if I push it out far enough, that is going to miss the planet, I suppose is the best way to look at it, and it'll turn into a proper orbit. Likewise, if I do retrograde, that should slow me down. That's going to kind of condense the parabola a little bit. And I'd probably want to use that either if I was returning to the planet or I wanted to make my orbit more shallow, which is effectively the same thing. So I don't want to waste all of my time because I am a minute away from apoapsis. But I can get an estimate in terms of how this thing's going to work, and basically I want to make it a circular orbit, so 100 each. I can kind of know, obviously if I go too far out, my apoapsis, my old high point becomes the low point, so 98, 105, good enough for government work. And it tells me that in 1 minute, 19 seconds, I'm going to hit this maneuver point. Alright, so I've seen all I need to there. Now this gives me a bit of a heading, so this blue marker is where I want to be pointing when I perform this maneuver. So I'm just going to direct myself there. The angle seems a little wonky. Okay, that'll do actually. Okay, so this is my current apoapsis. This will be my new apoapsis, the high point, and then the periapsis is the low point, which you can kind of guess. And so the idea here is I'm going to speed up. I'm going to extend this orbit so that I'm basically 100 kilometers around the planet at any given moment. It's going to take me 14 seconds, so probably at 28. Actually, I'll just do it now. So I'm going to start accelerating now, and the blue line is my actual orbit, which you're going to start seeing expand right now. Something is not working right. Did I run out of fuel? I did. Alright, I hope this isn't screwing too much. Okay, yeah, so this is not the most efficient use of my fuel, but I believe I should still get there. There we go. Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's my actual periapsis is 98 and my actual apoapsis is 103, so I'm not going to come crashing back to the planet. That's fine, and I can ditch this maneuver. I'm a little worried about... Well, no, that's still a lot of fuel. So, that is my first orbit. Here is the moon, the Mun. My job is to go there. Oh, okay, that's why everything looks weird. It's kind of a crooked orbit. I don't know how that's going to affect my ability to get on the moon. Actually, I should be able to add a maneuver that does that. Okay, so the logic of this thing is I don't want to shoot for where the moon currently is, because the moon is also moving, admittedly very slowly, but I'm also going to take a long time to get there. And so I want to try and shoot so I can get to the moon where I need to. Yeah, it is. I think I'm just going to twist my orbit a little bit. I'm heading... Jeb can want to explore deep space all he wants. Oh my god, this thing is horrible. Yeah, okay, so I think I know how to fix this. Other way? Nope. This is how NASA does it, right? Trial and error. How did I get this orbit? Okay. Kinda looks better. I think if I do this enough times, I'm gonna fix it. Right, good point. Thank you. Oh yeah, of course, this is chat is not going to translate to any recording of this. So, Alex, my friend, veteran of Kerbal Space Program, and probably going to be antagonist when I do stupid well, I've already done stupid stuff. He's actually very kind. Pointed out that I want to do this on the equation, not the apoapsis. Now, finding the equator on this godforsaken rock is a whole other matter. Okay, that's a pole. This is roughly the equator, so I want to do the maneuver about here. I can see this broadcast failing at space is well titled. Okay. That's better. Yeah, I can live with that. It's a pain in the... Oh, you triggered the profanity filter. Should start broadcasting your... Oh yeah, I will share, so... Yes, this part is a pain in the ass, but don't worry, Jeb is probably just excited those boosters didn't kill him this time. Jeb is excited that the boosters have never killed him because Jeb can feel excited about not being killed by things. There have been no Kerbals that have died in this brilliant space program. I don't know what kind of slipshod, Bain Capital nonsense you've been running. Alright, so I'm just going to speed up time because it's 6 minutes to that point. This is going to widen out my orbit, but that's not actually the worst thing in the world because well, okay. If it puts me further away from the moon, that might be a problem, but well, I think I'll just gonna have to take my chances on that, to be honest. Okay, so it's a 2.5 minute burn, so I should probably be doing this maneuver now, actually. I have no idea where the target for this is. Oop. Oh god. I should do things slowly in space. So interesting point, there's a very good puzzle game called The Bridge, which has this exact same song. I don't know if it's stock music or if the Kerbal people just really liked it and asked for permission to use it. So I'm missing my node. Oh Jesus, that's a 2-minute burn. Okay, but it doesn't take that much fuel, so... I don't actually think I'm going to make it to the moon with this. Yeah, okay. So I'm basically going to use up the majority of my fuel to create this orbit, and if I get to the moon, I won't come back. So we will abort another mission. But while we're up here, let's do some science. I've pretty much done all the science I can at this level. Yeah, nothing to be gained from that crew report. And Jebediah will risk his life by going out into space. Oh, this is neat. I haven't gotten one of these yet. Okay, so I need to be oops, I didn't mean to go outside or back in. Okay, so I'm going to activate his suit. Run free. So this will at least give an indicator in terms of how this... It's a long reach he's got, that's for sure. Kind of give you an idea of how this ship is supposed to work in principle. I take the Kerbal out to collect this material. Uh-oh. I should have gotten some driving lessons. The game's writer cries every time someone skips the science descriptions. Okay, you know what? Just for you and in support of your profession, I will read all the science. No science to read. Sorry, your writer failed me. Alright, well, I took too much science. Dump them. Let's get the hell out of here and try not to make such a crappy expedition. Probably the most sensible place to do this would be at Apoapsis, and then just, as I kind of said before, fire in retrograde so that my periaps goes to a point. Actually, this will give me a chance to try and explore a biome. Yeah, okay. I've got enough fuel to get me back, so let's try and be selective in where I land. This kind of looks like a desert here. Could try going for mountains, actually. Okay, actually that's kind of close to the Apoapsis. Okay, I'm going to try and target a landing in one of the mountainous areas. Does that make sense? Gravity's probably going to pull him. Well, it's probably not going to be very successful, but I'll give it a try. So the idea here is to try and get to one of these other areas I haven't explored yet, and ideally I'll be able to conduct some science there, and not make this a complete waste of a trip. Again, I set a waypoint, so I will not make the mistake I made last time. I'm targeting specific... Okay, yeah. Again, I don't think I'm actually going to hit it, but I'll at least try so that I can collect some science. and at least this time I'll be facing the correct direction. Now, you notice I spend a lot of time in this map screen. It's mostly just because I find these tools generally helpful, with the exception of my absolutely appalling orbit. At least for the purposes of oh well, I'm on the dark side anyway. For the purposes of this 11 minutes to node, I'll give a nice dark view of the ship. Space is pretty though. There we go. There it is, taunting me. 2 failed trips. At least nobody's died. So here I'm just going to wait till the 1 minute mark and then I'll go back to the normal time. Oh, I missed a sunrise, sorry. At the 1 minute mark I'll probably just go into normal time. And I'm not entirely sure if there's any better way to do this, but it gives me an estimated burn of 6 seconds. So, for want of any better description, I figured just dividing it between the two. So I spent 3 seconds before the node, 3 seconds after the node. Seems to be the best way, because I'm obviously not going to be able to condense 6 seconds in the less than 1 second I'm actually at the node. Now I can obviously help myself by being in the right position, which I wasn't in the previous case. But other than that, I have no better idea in terms of how to affect these orbits. Okay. So, yeah, that looks like what we have. And I'm going to miss the mountains completely. But I could probably... There we go. That's still probably not going to make it, but I can try for that island. I think it's better that I just not mess with this that much. And I'll speed up just so we can descend a bit quicker. The game will automatically bring me back to a more reasonable... the game will bring me back to a more reasonable speed once I get close enough to the planet. Alright, so if there's any villages, they're going to be small ones here. So let's just dump the fuel at this point. This is a big target. I should have probably aimed here. I am also upside down, so let's fix that. And I tend to kill Kerbals. I wish there was a way to include the chat on the broadcast. That, or I don't know if you're serious when you say you succeeded. No, I'm assuming the succeeded in so many ways on this mission is pure sarcasm. I hate you. All right, so speeding up during the descent is a fantastic way for me to kill my Kerbals, but it's also very boring to just watch this thing fall. Let's see if we can find something. Oh, here we go. Now, I know in real life this is a big problem, and I mean, I think in terms of disasters, with the exception of Apollo 13, normally the deadliest parts of space travel are the launch and re-entry. This is the stuff that'll kill you. I know that's what got the Columbia. I don't think this affects you in the game. I've never seen... Like, I've seen it maybe play around with my... with how the direction of the capsule's going, but I've never actually seen it damage anything, so I don't know if they'll include that in a later version of the game or not, but let's see if I can find something appropriate for our re-entry. Mountains? What mountains? Well, there's a mountain. Maybe we can steer over there. Thank you for everyone who has tuned in or stayed tuned in. I think what I'm going to do is take a minute before the next launch. I'm going to do a small stretch, and as Lethal Frag likes to say, encourage everybody to go and do the same. That'll only be 2 or 3 minutes, but I will leave the music to play, and then we will finally establish an orbit around the moon. I'll see you then. Oh, nice. I had no idea that this Twitch channel shows up. All right, that'll make for interesting broadcasting. So yeah, you got to see me advertising a boring stream to, well, not entirely boring. I'm having some fun with this. I hope you guys are as well. So yeah, I will do a quick recap. I should actually, again, want to give you some credit in terms of the music. Whatever I use for the launches and whatever I use for the kind of that intermission music is called Two Steps from Hell. Quite like it, very soundtrack-like. And again, this music is used without permission, and I kind of leave it to Twitch to sort out how they'd like to do that. I know they've muted some channels, and I know I suspect they probably have got some kind of job with the rights organization. But with that in mind, while I certainly can't pay them and would stop if they would prefer not to, I think one of the best things that I can do is support music that is good, and encourage you to seek it out on your own if you like it as well. I'm assuming you are watching this channel for something other than the music. So let's recap what's been happening. My goal at the moment is to reach the moon, or the Mun, as Kerbal Space Program will call it. I've had 2 unsuccessful launches. The first one was probably due to the design of the rocket, which we'll be reviewing when I go to the setup. The next one was I created an orbit that seemed to be very wonky. Now, there's a couple of mistakes that I had at launch which I think contributed to that, but I was a little, I won't say overly cautious, but basically my concern was that in order to correct the orbit, I would expend too much fuel, and as a result, I would not have enough to get home, which is less than favorable for the astronaut. So my current goal right now is to get some research and development. This is the tree that I'm working on here. I'll probably get electricity next. I actually have quite a bit of science and can get these things on their own. To give you an idea in terms of the research that I've done so far, lots of landings, lots of splashdowns, and I've been doing a number of observations. We did actually get some science on that last mission just because you can't collect all of, well, as you know, is the case in the real world, just because they've been to the moon once doesn't mean they've conducted all of the possible experiments that they can do on the moon. And so the previous mission wasn't a complete failure in the sense that I was able to collect some science which I had not done on previous runs. Of course, the intention of that ship was to go to the moon, so if this was the mode where I would be spending money, I would have spent quite a bit more money than what's entirely necessary to obtain science like that. And I actually think that might be an interesting dynamic that gets introduced into the game, which is, as is the case of any research and development in the world, there are a lot of problems that we probably have the know-how or the technology to solve, but is the annoyance or is the inconvenience, does it merit that kind of cost? I think there's a good example from Freakonomics that says, you can solve drunk driving by setting up roadside executions for anybody who's found, who fails a breathalyzer test, but the cost to society of roadside executions probably outweighs the benefit of not having any drunk drivers. So a similar idea, we may have some science that we can conduct, but do we want to make, a multi-billion dollar rocket so that I can find the soil on Kerbin, which is this current planet? Ideas like that. Now again, I'm not in this particular mode. Right now my only concern is science, so absolutely to get a lot of this, I made big rockets which moved me a few meters into the grasslands so I could collect a soil sample. Because I've passed that low-hanging fruit, I'm now trying to design slightly more sophisticated rockets, which we will see here. For those just tuning in, command module here, parachute, which has been used quite a bit, 2 science units, 1 fuel tank. The rocket is inside here. It is a multi-stage rocket, so only this should actually be returned. Well, okay, this will crash to Earth. This should return to Earth in one piece. This will also come crashing back down to Kerbin, I suspect, but this is kind of designed to get me flying. Like, this is designed to get me into orbit. These are just something to stand the ship on top of. And it follows some principles of symmetry. If you look at the center of mass, it's here. And then if you look at the center of thrust, well, I guess there's really no great way for me to show that they're right on top of each other, but they are. If I were to... I suppose the best example I can do is just add something onto... I'll do the mystery goo containment unit. So I'm just going to add one on here. Oh, you know what? This thing is so heavy it doesn't seem to... Well, you can sort of see. You can notice that the yellow ball is moving a little bit depending on where I put this. So the idea here is that I put one on each side so that I don't tilt the ship off into a different direction. That's ultimately what seemed to cause me problems on the last launch. Unfortunately, I don't quite know how to solve that. I think I have a suspicion I forgot to do something on the launch pad last time, which I'll explain when I'm on it. But at this point here, I don't really think there's anything I can do to improve this rocket. I'm not having problems at launch. These are coming off perfectly fine. It's launching the way that it should. 4 winglets seems to be enough. If I remove one, I'm potentially unbalancing the ship. If I add one, I'm potentially unbalancing the ship. And again, I don't seem to be twisting in weird directions except for this problem that I think I'm having, which I'll introduce when I get there. Maybe these can be better positioned? I don't know, it doesn't actually seem to be affecting the center of... I'm actually, to be completely honest with you, I'm not quite sure what these are doing. These are just batteries, which I'm told are good. I don't actually know why, though. Okay, well, I know why batteries... Okay, let me rephrase that. I know why batteries are good. I don't know why they are relevant to this particular trip. But I've been told to keep them on, and I am still learning this game, so I'm just kind of do what I'm told until I can assert my own opinions on things. So at this point here, I believe this ship should be capable of getting to the moon. The last time I ran into fuel problems, the first time these rockets collided with the fuel tank, and my pilot is lucky to be alive. So at this point, I'm going to go to the launch pad, and I'm going to briefly discuss the problem I think I had. So, for those of you who've played the game or who are maybe a little sharp-eyed, you'll notice that occasionally, if you look at this ball here, at the bottom, this SAS light has been kind of going on and off. Now this is an automatic stabilization that the game gives you, and this will use things like these winglets to basically maintain the course that I'm on. Now I know for a fact that I did not have this on at the start of the ship, or sorry, at the start of the launch for this same ship, and it moved to what's currently on the left, whereas my normal inclination is to go to the right, basically to go to the 90 degree heading. If you look at the ball is very hard to read, and I know I should actually maybe have explained a technical thing here. I didn't stream for a very long time because I thought the quality, it was basically a slideshow. In fact, I believe there's still a video on there of a slideshow version of the demo version of Kerbal Space Program. Now it turns out that was not a hardware difficulty. That is in fact a bandwidth constraint. The upload is I understand is actually very poor in Canada, but specifically for the service that I'm on right now and the package that I have, my bandwidth is not good enough for any kind of meaningful high-definition stream, and every indication I have, it's actually perfectly fine for, the hardware is perfectly fine to support something like that. If this is entertaining enough and I can get a format that's both fun for people and fun for me over a sustained period, I would actually consider changing that internet. But for now, I think the best way to go is just accept the constraints that I have and do my best to put on the best broadcast that I can with these limitations. All of that is a very long way of saying that to the immediate right, about 45 degrees to the right, is a 90-degree heading, which is generally where I want to be going to establish an orbit. I was going the opposite. I was heading the 270-degree direction, and I believe the adjustments I was making to correct that were what threw my orbit off last time. And so what I've done differently is I'm turned on the SAS from the very start. I'm going to lift the ship up. I'm going to do the exact same thing again. I'll maybe pull back on the throttle for my main engine just so I can conserve some of that fuel. But basically, I'm going to try the same thing and see if I can maybe establish my orbit a little bit more efficiently. And as is tradition, let's find some appropriate music for the launch. That's not quite what I want. All right, this should do. So something unexpected happened here, which is I still have all my rockets attached, which is really messing up my trajectory. This is probably going to be another failed mission, unfortunately, but let's do the best that we can. I seem to have stabilized that as best as I can. So what I'm doing right now, the apoapsis is the peak of my... Wow, that's a problem. Okay, I think this is not a recoverable mission. Yeah, unfortunately that fuel tank has caused me off. So this is the high point. I am not going to get any... I'm not going to get any better, and unfortunately the fuel tank has caused some real problems, so I'm just going to jettison the entire back. Mercifully, that did not collide. Jettison that. Wow. That guy is lucky to be alive. Okay, so I'm actually going to be interested to read the report on this one because the last time the couplers did not fail like that. And I'm just going to speed time up a little bit so I can get to the planet. At least it kind of failed early on, so at this point it's not as long of a wait to see a disaster. I don't want to be too reckless with the speed because I would prefer my pilot to live. There's also a reason, I think it's the sounds of my ship hitting the water. So I think this is a fairly good illustration of why I've not adopted the new career mode yet, is right now my only concern is getting science. I effectively have an unlimited budget for the space program. Clearly 3 disastrous missions like this would almost certainly bankrupt me. So at this point, it's nice to be able to fail effectively. The stream is titled the reason that it is right now. Again, at this point, I'm just waiting for the craft to land in the water so I can look at the report. I suspect what it's going to say is one of these couplers failed, which is why the rocket did what it did. Now, I don't think it will tell me whether that was caused by me going a little bit too horizontal. Well, it was more of a 45-degree angle. I don't know if that was caused by the direction I was going at the time, or if that was just unlucky. But we'll see what it says. No, don't do that. Cover the vessel. Oh, okay, it doesn't say anything about the flight. I have no idea what this stuff does. Okay, so apparently I didn't get a report on that flight. Again, so those properly separated the last time we used them, so the problem wasn't there. We didn't get a chance to use any other materials, so at this point I think I'm just going to try it again. Do I do corny launch music again? Let's see if I can find something. I won't spend too much time looking it up, just in case it turns into a disaster again, but let's see. Let's see if I have anything. Okay, it's actually an album I haven't listened to yet, but the sample I heard seemed appropriate. Oh yeah, let's try this. parachute music you'll ever listen to. Okay, I think I'm going to give the epic spacecraft music a rest for the next couple of launches, because at this point I need to figure out what's going wrong with the rocket. At this point I'm just going to run with a hypothesis that the fact that I'm not moving entirely vertical is what's causing those clips to fail. Part of that is supported by the fact that it was the side that the rocket was tilted to that the that held on. So I've got two options. I can just try to go vertical for the entire duration of the initial launch, which is probably the safer of the two bets, or I can try to make it vertical when they detach. Now, the other problem that I ran into, and certainly there was a more successful launch before the last two, that its problem was the orbit was off kilter, and I really couldn't fix that. So I think what I'm going to just do this time is a straight vertical launch. And from there, once I jettison the boosters, then I'll maybe worry about trying to establish that orbit. It will be less fuel efficient is my suspicion. Again, I like the fact that this game takes its physics somewhat seriously, and I think I'm going to try and pull out... I've got both Roger Penrose and Stephen Hawking's more... Well, I mean, a lot of it is cosmology, but definitely there's enough physics inside of it that I can probably pick up some of the ideas that this game's trying to communicate. So again, I don't know whether or not these are actual problems of physics or not. But I think what I'm just going to do is I'm going to go as I can, jettison the boosters, and then worry about doing my angle. And if I run out of fuel, then I can deal with that problem at this time. But at this point, I seem to be running into the same mistake over and over again, and I would rather move on to some real problems of establishing orbits, because really I've only established one up to this point. So. Yikes. Well, at least they didn't stick this time, I guess. I think I can revert the flow. Yeah. Let's go back to the launch. I am not having any luck with these decouplers. Okay, well, let's turn the SAS on first. that again. Okay, so we'll revert back to the assembly and see what we can do about not clipping my craft. Okay, so now I'm going to try putting these as low as possible. And I think I'm going to use the same logic when placing these fuel boosters. Try and get them as low as I can. That looks to be as low as I'll have. Yeah, I think that's the best I can do. Okay, so this is a very different craft from what I've made originally. Let's just think about the lot. Okay. So those are not... Okay, no, well, the placement of these isn't causing the rocket to crash into itself. Putting them lower has definitely lowered the chance of colliding with anything else. Still don't have much of a choice as far as where the winglets are going. I'm not entirely sure putting them higher or lower is really going to fix anything. So I suppose there's an argument for putting them up here so there's no chance that there's a collision, but I mean the way that these decouplers are working, everything should be shooting out straight anyway, not to the side. And I'm going to be shooting the rocket straight up to ensure that. So I don't see why that should be a problem. I should also reattach the blocks I was putting it on. So decoupler and the 4 blocks. Again, this is a little... Part of the reasoning was just to kind of even things out. These are clearly staying on. So, but I mean, I suppose I probably should just rest my rocket on these things anyway. So this seems like a good habit. To play around with these control settings. Again, if you're just tuning in, the idea here is that all of these rockets fire at the same time. Put this down. These all line up, right? So these 5 rockets all shoot at the same time. When these use up all their fuel, they will be jettisoned by these stack decouplers over here, and the previous attempts that I've had basically resulted in them ripping off the fuel tank and the 5th engine. And presumably I could use the main space part to navigate up into the atmosphere, but number 1, I would not have winglets, and number 2, that fuel is intended to be used in space because it has a much lower impact rocket. So I suspect I would get to the moon, but I would not be able to get back, which is undesirable for my pilot. So, got the bucket of bolts Mark III. Oh, I forgot to save. Okay, we've been here before. SAS is on. Throttle down a little bit. Let's see what happens. part of the journey, and I'm presuming that's because gravity will be working its most closer to the surface. So that's kind of what's motivating me. Alright, well that's encouraging. Probably not the most elegant navigation, but make it work. At this point, I'm going to switch to this view. And again, I'm just trying to get my apoapsis up to 100,000 feet. It's a nice round number, and it will allow me to establish a decent orbit. I could probably establish an orbit at a lower value, but 100, did I say feet? 100,000 meters. Basically, that's going to allow me to establish an orbit. It's going to be a very low pressure number. It's one of these things I've just kind of constantly done. Whether or not it's right is an entirely different matter, but I think I probably went a little too low for that. I think this is working right now, so I'm just going to leave it be. Okay, and I just cut my engines. So again, I've got plenty of time here. Let's see the shape of this thing. This is looking quite a bit better than the previous one. The previous one was remarkably off kilter. I'm glad we got me some music finally. Alright. So one of the tools I like using, the principle still applies. I fire in prograde at the high point of my orbit so that I speed up and I go around the planet. But I do like this maneuver tool that they've included. So I already know I'm going to be firing in prograde. And it's just nice to get an estimator. One trick I've kind of learned is that once apoapsis and periapsis kind of are at a 45-degree angle from my current apoapsis, usually that's a nice circular orbit. Well, it could be better. But this, I'd be happy with this. 95, 104, this is perfectly sufficient for what I'm doing. Ultimately, my goal is to hit the Mun. But to do that, again, it's nice to have a very low pressure situation. I don't need to worry about crashing back to Kerbin. I can just keep rolling around the planet. I can work out my perfect course. I don't really need to worry about... I don't need to worry so much about the time sensitivity of things. Now, I've got 33 seconds to burn, so I really should be facing this heading and working right away. I should probably make it 15 seconds on each side, actually, so I've got a little bit of time, but I'm definitely going to be cutting it close. I skewed my orbit a little bit, but yeah, that's perfectly fine. So the blue line indicates my actual orbit, the orange line indicates kind of my estimate. So I actually wound out with 99,104. Actually, this is better because it's higher than what my original amount was going to be. So I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm just closer to the Mun. So this is great. I could speed up time and I could just keep floating around this planet forever, but that is not what Kerbals were made for. There's a great trick I learned about actually, let me just double check this orbit as well, because I remember last time it was completely off kilter. Yeah, that looks great. So there's a really neat trick that I learned about this, which is I can make a maneuver anywhere, and then I can later change that point so it's facing any other direction. So let's use the same principles that we used to create the orbit around Kerbin. I launched a rocket. I moved high up into the atmosphere. I found the highest point of that journey, and I kind of moved into the direction that I was currently going, so that I could expand the orb. I could basically kind of expand the parabola, turn it into a circle, or as close to a circle as I could, and that's what allowed me to get into orbit. Now, if you think about it, I'm currently close to the planet here, and I'm trying to get out to the Mun, which is in this orbit. So it would make sense that if I want to position my ship at a point that is touching something here, I just burn in prograde until my orbit is changed to hit one of these areas in the Mun's orbit. It's probably better if I just illustrate it with one of these maneuvers. I won't put it close to my ship. I'll put it at Apoapsis, my highest point. So I burned prograde. This is not going to be anywhere near where the Mun's actually going to be, but this is the thing I like about the tool. So again, you notice I'm burning prograde, going faster, my orbit's going out, and I want to touch something that is in the orbit of the Mun. Okay? So I'm now roughly where it should be. Mun's 11,400. This would take me to 11,393. So I'm missing it by 7 kilometers, which I'm almost certain would be enough for me to do a landing, or possibly hit a mountain, depending on what it looks like. Now, apparently, what I should be able to do is grab this point, and I should be able to move it around my existing orbit. Yeah, there we go. So the nice thing about this is that I should be able to point this to where the Mun is going to be. Obviously, I don't want to be just shooting where the Mun is right now, because it's going to move by the time that I get there. So this tool will allow me to see... Okay, so I'm going the wrong... Oh, here we go. It looks a little weird right now. But actually, 291 isn't that bad of a periapsis from the Mun. Let's see if I can do better. So what you can see here is basically when I land at my new encounter, the Mun's going to be over here. I'm going to get pulled into its gravity, and that's actually going to change my orbit around Kerbin. Now, I am actually going to want to establish an orbit around the Mun, but that's fine. I can basically do with the Mun periapsis what I did with the apoapsis on Kerbin. I can just fire. Now, in this case, it wouldn't be prograde, it would be retrograde, because I want to slow down and make it so I'm not just kind of flinging around the moon, but make it so that I get captured inside of its orbit. But it's nice. Let's see if I can get the periapsis, the low point, any closer to the Mun. This is very tricky because oh, what am I doing? I don't know what parameter I'm changing. Okay, yeah, that's going to throw everything off. Okay, let's throw that away. So that's a little frustrating just because I need to do all that work again, but that's fine. Now, I was overshooting it a bit the last time. Oh, okay. I was overshooting it a little bit last time, so I'm actually going to make it near, but not exactly touching the orbit. Okay, let's zoom in a bit. Here we go. All right. So this is probably not an orbit I'm exactly looking for, but I'm at least roughly in the area that I want to be. Yeah, this is tricky. Oh, actually that was really encouraging for a bit. I also don't know how precise I need to be on these things because I can always change it sort of after the fact. The one thing I don't want to do though is kind of crash into it, so maybe if I try zooming in I'll be able to get a little bit more finesse. So what if okay. Yeah, that's too close. Okay, that's a weird orbit, but that's definitely looking closer to what I want. Oh, and that's 107. Okay, so that's actually exactly what I'm looking for. So I kind of lucked into it. I hit that node in 30 minutes. So there's two things I could do. I mean, I know it's not always the most visually compelling just to look at a map. I actually really like the scenery of this. But my ship looks like a ship. There's not a whole lot to go on it. So this is, I mean, we've effectively got a very good game plan at this point. I am going to go back to this map here. The maneuver, actually, so while I probably didn't hit that point before, I think my apoapsis is around here, so I kind of flew by it while I was trying to work out the right maneuver. But that's not bad, right? Because the whole reason for me establishing an orbit was so I would have a very low pressure situation in which I could sort of work this stuff out. So what I'm basically going to do here, I'm going to finish my circuit around Kerbin. I'm going to fire my rocket. It doesn't give me an estimated burn, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm basically going to expand this orbit out. The blue line should work around here. The Mun encounter basically means I'm being influenced by its gravity. And it's what you'll notice here is basically it's going to change it so I sort of go into this weird, almost S shape, I guess. And my intention is to burn retrograde at the periapsis so that I tighten the move. Basically, I guess the way you can think about it is the apoapsis of this Mun encounter goes way off to the side somewhere, and we can't see it basically because I return into an orbit around Kerbin. So what I want to do is I want to tighten that circle. I do that by burning retrograde, and once I establish an orbit around the Mun, I can do my experiments. Again, lower pressure situation. I don't really have to worry about that much. And then I can worry about getting back to Kerbin. That's a whole other matter, which I won't worry about. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my SAS. I'm going to face the heading that I need to. And it's 28 minutes until I actually hit that point. So I know you're not going to want to sit there and watch that the whole time. Neither am I. What's this? Ah, Jebediah is as courageous as he is stupid. I actually never noticed this stuff before. Alright. So I'll try and tighten this up as much as I can. I definitely prefer playing the game from this perspective, but I know it's not always the most visually appealing. But, I mean, let's face it, if you want to watch a stream of somebody who's good at this game, there's lots of other ones. This is the one thing I've learned about Twitch is no matter how good you think you are at a game, there's always going to be somebody who is worlds better than you. And so if there's going to be any appeal, it's these story ideas once I move into career mode. And I suppose there is some interest in seeing somebody learn this. So the most helpful tool I can say to somebody who's trying to learn this game is to actually use this map mode and its helpers, such as waypoints and things like that. I've already set my waypoint and all that, and I'm facing the right direction. What might be kind of interesting to look at, I never really explained this before, is the green dot is actually my current prograde. So if I were to be facing that and fire, let's say I didn't use my waypoints, that would be increasing the orbit. It'd be making it larger. So what's going to happen here, at the waypoint, I set the waypoint so that I would be firing in prograde at that particular moment. So I'm actually facing the heading that will be prograde when I hit the waypoint in 26 minutes. That's 26 minutes game time. I am going to speed it up once I finish explaining this. What'll be kind of interesting, I don't have a nice, I suppose this will have to do for the visuals of the ship. What's going to happen is you're going to notice that the ship is actually going to turn itself into prograde because I've kept the SAS on and I'm facing the heading, and as I get closer to the waypoint, the ship is going to, its prograde is going to align with the heading. That's what that tool does. It's why I find it so helpful. So I'm going to abandon the map mode just so I can kind of illustrate that point. And we'll speed up. So if I fired here, I would decrease the size of my orbit, which is not what I want. Okay, 10 minutes away. I'll slow it down a little bit just so I don't miss this. Okay, and I'm actually thrown off my heading a little bit, which is surprising, but that's an easy fix. And you can sort of already see this point illustrated. The ship hasn't actually changed that much. If you look at where we are in comparison before, we were about here, now we've gone around. The idea is that, if you fix this object and you move it around, eventually it's actually going to be facing facing into the orbit would be a way of turning. I mean, again, I like using, as complicated as the terms are, apoapsis and periapsis actually make sense. If you have a specialized term for it, then eventually you just kind of become used to it. I suppose the same way that, economic terms seemed very unusual, but now they just become second nature to me. So I've got 2 minutes. I'll speed up a little bit just so I make it a 1 minute countdown, but I am going to go back to the map mode just so I can see. Again, the orange line is where I'm predicted to go. The blue line is where I'm actually going. And it's nice to get some confirmation that what I'm doing is actually working. See, the trick here is I don't actually have any indication of the estimated burn. So I don't know if maybe I should just start firing my rockets now, because I suspect that'll be a really long burn that I need to do. Let's see. Yeah, 1 minute. Nice thing though is I'm running this full speed and it seems to me that it doesn't seem to be consuming that much. I'm actually going to kill this for a second just because it says I've got a 23-second burn and I'm not as close to the waypoint as I'd like, so it will be more efficient if I get closer to that. So dividing that by 2 will say that's 11 seconds. Yeah, so T minus 11 will be when I fire that up again. Again, I think I probably used about 50 units for that, so I should be a little conscious in terms of what's going to take me to get back home. For those of you that think this is boring, imagine what Chris Hadfield went through. I suppose he didn't go to the moon. All right. Those estimates seem very different. Oh if I can make that a little better. Okay, I think that is as close as I'm possibly gonna get. Oh, I might be able to do a little bit more. Yeah, that periapse is very different from what I was expecting. I don't know if there's really any benefit to me trying to improve it, but I'll just do it one more time to see. Okay, you know what? I still get where I need to go, so it was much better in planning than in practice, but I can absolutely improve this when I get closer to the moon. So we will do the same thing here. Again, I'm going to keep this in map mode just because I'm actually going to go quite a bit faster now. Okay, I'm just going to slow down for the purposes. Just to illustrate a point that we made at the beginning of the orbit. Again, remember that when we started this whole thing, the moon was about here. I think so, anyway. Just above the clock. Now, you know, it's in this position, and by the time this is done, it's going to move here. At escape, it's going to be further, but I don't actually want to escape it. I want to get trapped in its orbit. So that's why, again, I find that tool particularly helpful, just because in the end, it you know, it does all of that calculation. It's not just guesswork where I'm firing in prograde and hoping to hit it at the right time. I know the tutorial of the game recommends that you do it at, I guess 45 degrees, but, you know, the appeal of moving up from the demo is that there's more than one planet. I actually wonder if I can show these right now. So, what do they call it? Minimus? Oh, that's neat. Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, so they've got... Yeah, so they have a full solar system. Moho, Eve. Oh, that's... Okay. Nice. I'm not sure what these unknown objects are. It could be debris from... my previous? So I was going to say it could be debris from my previous adventures, let's say. But it's kind of interesting that they only show up when I'm looking at larger things. I'm not quite sure what the... Yeah, you know what? I think this world has only existed for a day, so... Oh wait, no, last scene... Okay, no, last seen a day ago. Yeah, and there's nothing that can be classified as huge that I would put on a ship, so maybe they're asteroids. I'm not quite sure what those are. That's actually really interesting, though, because that's, you know, we don't seem to be launching too many shuttles right now, but certainly NASA is receiving a budget, and there's plenty of work to be done, even if you're not launching rockets. So it's kind of neat that they're actually making the whole space program inside of it. Anyways, I kind of promised I was going to go faster, so... I'll still keep the map mode just because, again, this is giving me the information that I want to see. I don't really want to go any higher than 1,000 because if I don't do this properly, an otherwise good run is going to waste. So, okay, so now I'm going to slow right down. I still have plenty of time. Again, it's a matter of scale, so this is still 44 minutes away. But it's nice just to kind of check my bearings and make sure I'm doing everything that I should. Speed up again. Okay, definitely not going back to, well, one more to 1,000. Okay, that's mildly concerning. Oh, hang on. I should be going into that, right? Yeah. Oof. Okay, actually, there's no benefit to me not... Oh, okay, so, yeah, okay, the mun pulled me in. That's why it was that weird shape. Probably should have paid attention to that before. So, I know I've said this before, but I spent a bunch of time babbling about NASA and all of that, so I'm just going to reiterate my intentions here. I'm currently Actually, this is a good point. Like, this information is not irrelevant. Right now I'm traveling at 406 meters a second. That means that when I hit this point, I'm just going to go flying off. What I want to do is I want to start circling. So this is my lowest point to the Mun. In order to get caught into its orbit, I need to slow down, which means I want to be firing my big rocket in the way, if you yes, there are brakes on cars, but if you're in space, there's nothing you can run the brake on. And so basically I just need to use some kind of a force in the opposite direction of where I'm going. They're going to be competing and I'm going to slow down as a result. The opposite direction, prograde is the direction that I'm going. Retrograde is the opposite of the direction that I'm going. So I want to burn in retrograde.